Hello world, my name is Andy Silvers and today we're going to talk about setup and payoff. Alright, so this series is about literary devices. You can have all the most creative writing in the world, awesome characters, awesome designs, but if you don't infuse it with structure, it will fall flat. In order to discuss this topic, we're going to use specific examples from my latest novel, Red Sprites and Blue Jets. Be warned, there are spoilers ahead. The idea of setup and payoff is pretty simple, but people forget to do it often. You want your reader to feel satisfied when they finish the book, and setup and payoff can help with this. If you introduce an element or character, you should give them a proper conclusion or send-off. This helps give your book direction, and keeps you from writing useless ideas that go nowhere. This concept is often referred to as Chekhovs Gun. The famous playwright said that if you place a loaded rifle on stage, it must go off. This of course isn't meant to be literal. The idea is that if you, the writer, introduce an element or concept, it needs to pay off in some way. If it doesn't, then the story will feel directionless. In the real world, ideas can be set up and not paid off, but in a story, a narrative, it needs to pay off in some way in order to feel satisfying for the reader or audience, depending on what medium you're using. For instance, if you establish on page 10 that your lead character has a sword tattoo, you should reveal at some point what that means. Maybe they're battling it out with the villain and they discover they have the same tattoo. That can open up a lot of questions. Setup, payoff. I use setup and payoff extensively in my novel, Red Sprites and Blue Jets. For instance, the idea of Cooper drinking a homemade milkshake is paid off later when he creates his own milkshake stand. This is made more believable by the fact that I set up the idea that Cooper is familiar with how to make a milkshake and actually likes being in the kitchen and likes cooking and baking. Because, remember, Cooper is 9 years old. A lot of 9-year-olds aren't in the kitchen, they don't cook, they have no clue how to bake or make anything. But it's established in the early chapters of Red Sprites and Blue Jets that Cooper is not only familiar with basic cooking technique, but that he actually enjoys the cooking process. So it actually makes complete sense when Cooper sets up a milkshake stand. The idea that Wesley refuses to let his sister play baseball with him is also set up early on so that in the end, when Cooper tricks Wesley into letting her play with him, it demonstrates Wesley's immaturity and illustrates Cooper's character growth by the end. It's shown in Chapter 1 that Cooper refuses to make his own bed despite being old enough to do so. The scene isn't wasted. Having the moment where Cooper is standing around blabbing while his mom struggles to make his bed is there as setup for the payoff later when Cooper grows and matures and he gets to a point where he realizes he can make the bed for himself. So many books fall short in this area because the author just writes in whatever cool idea they have. Ooh, maybe the sword can also turn into a gun. Ooh, maybe there could be a flaming catapult with a dragon's head on it. Ooh, maybe she could end up falling for this guy and then falling for that guy. There's just so many ideas that authors have, and it makes sense. Authors are inherently creative people. But if you don't have structure, if you don't have direction in your story, none of this stuff's going to work. Setup and payoff can also be emotional. A character could be established to never give hugs to anyone, but at the end of the book, they could give a hug to just the person who needs it most. That would be emotionally satisfying. Setup and payoff makes the story more satisfying because it guides the reader along the character's journey. It also can add tension. If you set up that a character will execute anyone who disobeys them, then you better have them execute at least one person. This is because if you're going to set up a character as threatening, you need to pay them off at some point as being threatening. Otherwise, you're just relying on a character's words. So for instance, having a character through dialogue say, oh, this person's really threatening. I heard they beheaded like 15 people. That doesn't carry as much weight as showing the person, the villain, beheading at least one person. This helps to clearly establish in the reader's mind how much of a threat the person is. Ultimately, you don't want your story to feel like it was made up as you went along. You want it to feel like it's going somewhere, that there's structure, that there's pacing, All this stuff is important in writing, and setup and payoff is one of the crucial aspects to it. If you set something up, you have to pay it off in some way. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Please write in the comments if there's anything else you want me to talk about with regard to the writing industry. I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my latest novel, Red Sprites and Blue Jets, which is available on Amazon right now. It has a 4.8 out of 5 stars. Also, check out my brand new Facebook page, Andy Silver's Books. Be the first one to get updates on my brand new novel, Solomon Grandel vs. the Jupiter Witch, which is scheduled for release this fall. Also, hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me out. I'll see you in the next one.